Happy Mother's Day. It is so excited to be I'm so excited to be here with you today on this beautiful day of celebrating just mothers, caretakers, those in a motherly role, those in a mentorship role. And I really wanted to just dive in because I just love talking about a creativity, intercultural creativity, prismatic leadership. And connection is a Mother's Day. I labeled this quick diamond mentor moment a Mother's Day tribute, how maternal creativity transcends generation. I really wanted to highlight the things that we're doing, the things that our ancestors may have did, the things that our dependents will be the recipients of, and really connect to see how does that look like when we analyze and reflect upon our own lived experience and when we intentionally build the brains of those in our care. So, first of all, happy Mother's Day. And here we jump in. I am looking to just really share the background of what it really means to build brains. Those of you who have been following my work, you know I love the neuroscience connected to my background of psychology, education, and really building these up well. A lovely quote that I love by Dr. but not Dr. Mr. Frederick Douglass. He said, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair, I say fossilized, but repair broken men and women," meaning it's easier to really tap into how the cognitive structures are built in the brain during the early developmental years than it is to kind of change someone already fixed in their ways. And so what does that mean as we celebrate this holiday? When you look at the brain neurons, right? The brain's neurons. We have all these neurons that we are born with and not really connected to well. That's why infants are just kind of spazzing out, moving around. But we have close to 100,000. I believe it's about 80. The number keeps changing on depending who you're listening to. But there's about 100,000 neurons just ready to go. And the second we're here, even prenatal in the womb, they are listening. They are, just looking, especially when their eyes get focused. They're taking in their environment. And the first few years of life are critical to build these neural pathways, right? And the networks are building. And if you look at this graph, by 4 years of age, right, to 6 years of age, the brain starts pruning, starts cutting away these neurons that aren't being used. And so what does that mean as we are celebrating the mothers, the caretakers, the mentors of people in their human journey? I wanted to use this time to really just celebrate a few people in my personal life, my mother, and I'll talk about her, and my grandmother. And I want to use these stories to act as examples and just these archetypical stories of maybe things that people can see in their own life, right? Well, so my first grandmother that I'm going to talk about, I have two. This is my maternal grandmother. Her name is Della Marie Cantrell, and her and I actually have the same middle name. My middle name is named after her, and just a woman of really compassion, really just cared about people. I remember her saying, and my aunt repeated this: "We are people who care about people." And there's a story that I shared at my sister's wedding when she was driving in a car with someone, and the car in front of her, someone kind of tossed out a woman. I don't know what the parameters were about, but this woman just kind of got tossed out the car, and my grandmother stopped her car and got out and saw about the woman, and then went even a step further. She put the woman in her car and took her home and nursed her back to health, and saw where she needed to go and what type of assistance she needed. And I never forgot that story. It almost reminds me of the Good Samaritan story of just a woman who cares about people, who couldn't just keep going when someone was distressed. And so that spoke to me. But one thing about my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, that really made me reflect was when I was talking to my mother, and she was talking about when she was in high school, and she was going to a particular school. I forgot which one. It was a school in Los Angeles. And, she wanted she thought about college. She really didn't know. No one in her family went to college. And she realized that the high school that she was going to didn't have the advanced science courses that she would need to apply to a four-year university. So she went home and she talked to my grandmother, and my grandmother did something that maybe a lot of people wouldn't do. She packed everyone up and they relocated across town so my mother could attend a high school that had advanced science courses. That really rung with me true, because my mother went to that new school. She enrolled, and the day later, after she enrolled into that new school, she met a college recruiter from UCI, University of California, Irvine, who shared with her the EOP program. And I believe that's called the Equal Opportunity program, really just to get people from marginalized backgrounds, women into college, right? And she just happened to meet her that next day of enrolling into the high school. And my mother met her. She ended up finishing the courses she needed. She ended up applying to UCI, and she got in. This made me think of, what if my grandmother would have said, well, oh wow, they don't have the classes, just deal with it. What if she hadn't have had that huge sacrifice in order to get my mother to a school that had the resources that she needed to thrive and go to the next step. I just got finished doing a training at a huge organization in North Carolina where I did a growth mindset training. And we're looking at growth mindset, not just as an internal mindset, like it's all about how you think, but also analyzing the environment. Are you in an environment for growth mindset? Like my mother had a growth mindset, but she was in an environment that didn't have the resources or the classes in order to continue growing. And so we look at growth mindset with more complexity now, of analyzing what are the influences, internal influences like mindset and other things going on, how you reframe your biofeedback, but also external influences. Are you under leadership that supports your growth mindset? Is the organization or the school, do they have resources that supports a growth mindset? There's so many other influences and factors at play. And so I use this story to have other people analyze few things. So number one, and I'm going to go on to my next grandmother, just look at the resources around you and look at what was done before you even got here that affects your rise, right? And so my mother was now the first one in her family to attend college. Funny story, my grandmother got her like these pleated skirt and these high like sock tights and just this outfit. And my mother wore the outfit to the first day of school in college. And then my mother got on campus and she looked around and everyone was in jeans and t-shirts. And she went home, she called her home and she's like, Mom, everyone's in jeans and t-shirts. And my grandmother, they just started laughing because my grandmother was like, I'm sorry, that's what I saw on TV. I didn't know. I didn't know. So once again, we have a lot of first gen stories, and that's my mom's first gen story of, if you're not a part of a culture or a group or a family system that's used to these different spheres, either collegiate or high corporate or things like that, we just go off of what we see on the media or what we see in entertainment, right? And just do the best we can. And that's why I'm so glad to be connected with people who are doing great work with first generation students and really supporting them in the hidden curriculum, right? Things that we're supposed to know, but we don't know because we're the first to go, right? And so just a shout out to my grandmother. She is passed. She passed in 2006. And yeah, just her having the boldness to really uproot the whole family. And she has four girls, right? It wasn't just my mother. My mother's the oldest, but that really showed everyone else just, and it showed me, what am I going to do to make sure I succeed and also my children succeed? What resources do they need to be successful? And so my grandmother is amazing. And my other grandmother, this is my paternal grandmother. That's her with my father at about 5 years old. So this is around 1950 or so. And that's my grandfather in pictured, who served 35 years in the U.S. Navy. And if my maternal grandmother was compassionate, my paternal grandmother was courageous and bold and confident. And even though she lived in Louisiana in a time where if you are a Black woman, your confidence and boldness can really get you in trouble, she just didn't care. She was, she told you like it is, and I just remember I never forgot her assuredness, right? No matter what. And after a while, she got very tired of the way things were in the deep South, especially for marginalized groups. So she moved the family up to Ohio. Right, my grandfather's off in the Navy, so she's basically a single mom raising four boys. Right, while my grandfather is serving for the U.S. Navy. And I remember talking to my father and him saying, wow, like it blew my mind once I left the deep South. And this is what, 19, probably in the 50s or early 60s, probably before the Civil Rights Act in 1964, or right around maybe when Brown versus Board happened and the integration of schools happened. But they moved to Ohio. And my dad just shared, I just remember it was just so different. I was learning with all types of people, and the books were different, the resources were different, and he remembers a stark difference of what he was being offered in Louisiana as a young Black boy, and then what he was being offered in Ohio, where it was more diverse. Things weren't perfect, of course, but it was just more diverse, and he had more access to information, to education, and to people who wanted to see him succeed. And once again, I have two grandmothers who saw the need to literally move my parents into areas where they could be successful. And that, really communicates to me that the success and the opportunities and the resources that I have being born in the late 70s, and being born and having a speech impediment and an IEP and just some struggles growing up, the success that I have is not my success solely. This is huge. When I look back at the generational inputs, when I look back at the strategic moves that my ancestors did in order to place my parents, and this is probably going off before my grandmothers, but in order to place my parents in positions of success where other people may not have access. Like I can't contribute any success that my life is having to my own actions. Yes, I've worked hard and things, but with all the struggles and with all the just the hitting up against the ceiling and all the obstacles and roadblocks for my grandparents and for my parents, the fact that they strategically still tried to make the best of the situation um, has built a foundation for my siblings and myself. My brother now works for NASA. He's a mathematician. My sister majored in astrophysics, and she's celebrating, I think, 25 years, or maybe 20 years with a private company, a private science company, doing amazing things, being a project manager. My little sister is a ER neural nurse, so she's in nursing in the neural world ward, and all of our ability to do what we do and be excellent in our fields connects back to my ancestors who strategically moved, especially in an area where their identities and their demographics really set up obstacles for them to rise. And so I wanted to take this time to tribute my ancestors, my grandmothers, my parents, people who came before me, that I have no words, right? Just their ability to do what they did allows me to do what I can do. And I also wanted to continue and go on with, this is my mom. And so I wanted to talk about my mother on Mother's Day, right? Yes, go. anteaters. I wanted to talk about my mother on Mother's Day and really use her as an example to other mothers going out there and bring up the neuroscience behind it as well. This is Miss Gwen Jefferson. She is a UCI graduate, and she just brilliant. She taught for 30 years in the school system teaching biology. But as a mother, I remember she was just really curious. She was really curious and adventurous. And that is key because, as you'll see, the level of curiosity of a C-suite member, right, of leadership within an organization has direct alignment with how ambidextrous an organization is, how well they utilize their resources and exploit the resources they have with them, but also how well they look around the corner for any opportunities and resources to come. They're really analyzing the landscape, basically like Blockbuster, not really seeing that streaming's down the line. Like, what does this look like? And so we have a lot of examples for organizations, but what does that look like within the home? Right. And so my mother really had the ability to not just be curious, but she really mapped it out as she was raising us. She ran into a woman who was taking the train across the country. She was like, "How did you do that?" And the woman told her about the Amtrak program where you can get on the train and jump off at any city and then get back on the train. And my mother saw how much it cost for a group of 5, right? She had four kids, single parent mom. My father was kind of in and out, but she backtracked. She was like, "Okay, we need $800 to do this. What does that look like to save up 10 months on a teacher's salary back in the 90s? Not a lot for 5 people. We ate top ramen. We stayed at 2-star hotels, but she gave us adventure. She gave us adventure, and that was huge. And I asked parents, like the things you do in their developmental years, that 0 through 12 age frame, is setting up their neural structures, right? Their cognitive structures for how they're going to interact with life and push into the world as adults. So we literally saw her goal set. We literally saw her break things down, problem solve, and then bring things to fruition. We literally saw her put us in situations where we didn't know anyone. We were places where, usually we were the only African-American family there, but she was always adventurous. And that communicated things to us that set our neural networks to look for adventure, to look with curiosity, and to be able to connect with people from different lived experience. And I say I'm not the inventor of intercultural creativity. My mother is, because she created a home where intercultural creativity behavior was expressed. And it was not only expressed, it was expected that we practice it during our early developmental years. And so that is key. We talk about attachment theory, and that's going to be huge. I'm even creating some trainings around how do we deal with attachment theory as adult and what does that look like for our leadership. But here's Dr. Daniel Siegel out of UCLA. This is an old video, but what he's talking about is still currently true about how when you create a culture of integration, right? You're integrating the experiences. The brain is being integrated. You have good attachment, meaning you have good solid relationships during the early developmental years. Hopefully any type of abuse is not there, that things are rectified if there's a breakage in trust, that's fixed in a healthy way. Here's him talking about the importance of integration.
The issue is when you have a part of the brain that connects directly to the entire brain, what does that allow those synaptic connections to do? It allows them to take the differentiated components of the brain and bring them together as a functional whole. And how many of you are familiar with complexity theory? Okay, so you may know from complexity theory that complexity theory states that when you take differentiated elements of a system and integrate them together, the system becomes the most complex. It's able to move toward complexity, right? And when something moves toward complexity, it's the most flexible adaptive, and stable, which is exactly what those 9 things do.
All right. So when things are complex and they move to complexity, it's able to be adaptable in different situations. And if you've seen my talks or my research, we talk about the Banny experience, right? VUCA versus Banny. Banny stands for the workforce is now brittle. People are getting anxious. It's not just complex, it's non-linear, meaning things are not just formulaic. You have to be creative. You have to be able to dance around different problems and be adaptable and flexible. And it's incomprehensible. So being able to just be adaptable in different situations is key. And so when you look at how the brain is laid out, which he talks about those 9 areas, and that's a good talk, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but just different areas that the mother, the caretaker, the father, the parent, whoever is caretaking the child can really build up from day one. So you can have a well, complex, and adaptable brain. My mother did that by putting us in different experiences, by getting us out of our comfort zone, and of course, by exposing us to the arts. Those of you who know my research, you know I'm big on bringing the arts into corporate training, university level training, and of course, K-12, and during the first 5 years of life. I believe the arts are going to be our silver bullet, not the answer to everything, but a definitely a strong answer to a lot of things, emotional well-being, cognitive flexibility, adaptability, leadership, the 21st century skills. An arts-based brain is gearing up for that adaptability and flexibility. At UCI, my mother was in a psychology class and she told me the story. She was like, yeah, the psychology teacher was just teaching and then he froze. And then he turned around and said, whatever you do, put your kids in music. And then he turned back around and kept writing or whatever. And then my mother said she never forgot that. She never forgot that. And whoever that professor was, I thank you. You were right on the money, because when you give your student, your child, an arts-based background that includes music, you are building their brains to be flexible and adaptable and emotionally aware and predictive and able to think at a deeper level as well. Here's Dr. Andrew Huberman out of Stanford talking about what happens when you give your child a musical background as early as possible.
There are now dozens, if not hundreds, of quality peer-reviewed studies using a variety of technical approaches that show that when children, especially children younger than 8, learn to play an instrument, and even better, learn to play multiple instruments, regardless of whether or not they learn to read music, that it leads to greatly enhanced connectivity within their brain that persists into adulthood, and that it facilitates other forms of neuroplasticity and learning, which is basically to say that my brain very likely does not include these enhanced circuits. Which circuits am I referring to? Well, there are a number of different circuits in the brain that have been shown to expand when children learn how to play an instrument as a child, 8 or younger. And again, 8 isn't a strict cutoff, and I always have to highlight this, forgive the tangent, but it's very clear that if you did learn an instrument when you were young, or ideally even multiple instruments, and even better would be to learn multiple instruments and how to sing along with instrumentals, especially in an improvised manner, well, your brain has expanded connectivity on average relative to children that did not have that experience. Now, the good news is that learning how to play an instrument, or even, thankfully for me, listening to novel forms of music that you don't typically listen to for 30 to 60 minutes per day, and it doesn't have to be every day. In fact, it can even be just 3 days a week for 30 to 60 minutes, has been shown to expand brain connectivity in ways that, of course, lends itself to better musical comprehension and even performance. But learning how to play a musical instrument at any age, as well as singing, and singing especially with others in a group, has been shown to enhance learning and the acquisition of new skills separate from musical learning and singing. In other words, it seems that learning how to play an instrument and singing are a gateway to neuroplasticity, And this is, again, supported by neuroimaging data. Some of the more striking of those data are that children that learned how to play 1 to 3 instruments when they were a kid, or that sang in a choir or a group, or that were taught to sing solo for that matter, show up to 30% greater connectivity within this particular brain network that links the 2 hemispheres of the brain.
All right. So there you have it. So important. If you do have a young child or looking to have children, that is something that you really want to keep in mind. And if it's never too late, if you're an adult, I say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And so also talking about brain health, right? And building brain capital. You've seen me talk about that, pulling from the work of the Brain Capital Alliance and Dr. Harris Ayer, looking at how do you keep the brain healthy, right? There's so many factors involved, but I believe music is going to be a big conversation, especially as we talk about the aging brain, the neurodegenerative diseases going on, dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. What can we proactively do to keep our brain healthy? And I believe music should be on that platter of items to do, right? Eating well, staying social, walking in nature, lowering behaviors like smoking and drinking to a minimum, and things like that. So my mother put us in music. She had us participate in intercultural creativity actions and did so many things. Another aspect that I want to really quickly go over, so happy Mother's Day, Mom, is that you don't necessarily need to be the biological mother of someone to have the neurological effects of helping to build brains. This is, we call her Tia Belin, and that is my little son there. And I was the teacher of her kids, right? Back 7 years old, all the way to 10. And then they were part of Alumni 360. And now they're in college. One is done with college, got a full ride, both of them through university, and just really, really blessed. And when I became pregnant, I was like, okay, well, who's going to help? What am I going to do with Sean when I have to go back to work? And like, do we do a daycare? Like, what are the options? And we ended up really just speaking to her. I loved what she was doing with her own children and just really supporting them academically, but also emotionally and morally as well. And just really doing a great job, her and her husband raising those two kids. And so I asked her, and you said, the day I dropped my son off at her house, I said, whatever you did with your kids, do with this one, right? Treat him as he was your own. And I shared this story because I want people to know, when you give your child to someone, whether it's a daycare or wherever, whoever is the authority figure in that space is influencing the mindset of your little one. Right? The culture, the beliefs, the importance, the values, those are all being encoded into the conscious and subconscious levels of the mind. And so that's why I was so happy to have her a part of Sean's life, because number one, she only spoke Spanish to him. So he only got Spanish for 3 years. In fact, his first word was agua, which was really cool. So his brain was set up with 2 languages, which was great, right? Neurologically speaking, music and language are some of the 2 most important things you can do for the brain, aside from positive social connection. And yes, she did a wonderful job. And so I tell Shane, my husband, like, there's 3 of us. There's 3 of us parenting this child, because he spent a significant amount of time in her care, in her motherly care. And so I do send a happy Mother's Day out to Tia Belin for her own children, but also for co-parenting, co-mothering my own child as well. And so look at motherhood that way, right? Your teachers, if they're influencing a child, they're acting like a mother or a father or a caretaker in that aspect, right? Anyone who has influence. And so wrapping up, right, this is a long diamond mentor moment, but this was today. My family and I went to the Phoenix Desert Botanical Gardens and really looked at some amazing things. It was wonderful being in nature. But just wanted to say happy Mother's Day. And that you, those of you who are celebrating in any type of form, any type of caretaker form, you have the power to now strategically navigate the creativity and curiosity of your descendants, right? We look back at my ancestors and how they strategically went, made moves that affected my success. And so I ask people, are you being a good ancestor? Am I being a good ancestor? Am I doing things for my son and my nieces and nephews that can strategically set them up for a life of creative success, for a life of financial success, for a life of emotional stability success? What does that look like? And so I'm doing this with my own son, with the students of Alumni 360, which is our nonprofit for the teenagers from my elementary school. And I just wanted to advocate for parents. Are you passing on the qualities of curiosity, of connections, intercultural connections, and adventure with your descendants? Think about that. So, we are publishing books together. I put my son's name on the book because he is co-author, but I'm also just thinking down the line, am I setting him up for success? If he wants to continue this after he's 18, because he does have to publish books for whatever he's learning, that's just the last step. It's not just writing the essay and turning it into a teacher. How do we get what you learned out into the world? That's a very important part of our strategy, right? But what does it look like for us to continue that, to build that? All right, so that is our Diamond Mentor moment for today. And we are looking at my beautiful brain. You can get that on cafestrategies.com or JanineLetford.com. That is by my family and I, and illustrated by Shane. And then our latest book is The Power of I Am. The Power of I Am. And it's a declaration book with beautiful illustrations by Victoria Mapala. And at the back of the book, I do talk to you. I say it's not a children's book, it's an inner child's book. And it talks to the adult that has the inner child within them. And so I talk to the parents, teachers, leaders, and caregivers about what's going on in the book and why it's important for you. And if you're reading it to a child and what is there. So check out these books. You can find them on cafestrategies.com. This one's on Cafe Strategies and the other one's on JanineLetford.com. And so that is the Mother's Day tribute. Thank you for listening. If you're looking to see where I'll be speaking next, I'll be doing a virtual keynote for the elementary school principals of LAUSD, talking about building brain capital, the work from Brain Capital Alliance, and building brain health. We'll be looking at really what is the Center for Brain Health really talking about over in the University of Dallas. And I'll also be doing the same day, May 16th, the IBM Supply Chain Digital Growth Expo. So we are just really excited to be sharing intercultural creativity, building brain capital. What does it look like to have a flexible, creative brain for this future of work? And so I am excited to keep sharing this. And I thank you for listening. And I thank you for being a wonderful caretaker. If you're a mother, happy Mother's Day. And if you're alive, happy being creative. And keep shining bright. That is your Diamond Mentor.